So I guess we're recording now. Oh God, that's a big spider. Sorry. There's a really big spider outside my window, and that's terrifying. Anyway, I know I haven't posted on this channel, mostly because I have almost no subscribers, and I feel like it's kind of pointless. Mostly I just do like Disney doll reviews, because I really do enjoy doing those. When I do get the rare chance to purchase one, because they are expensive as hell. But I've been wanting to do a video. I don't know, it's just kind of like a PSA, I guess. I've been doing some research through about, like, just basically from a very young age I had some mental issues. And I was researching, and I stumbled upon this thing called religious trauma syndrome. And I found it really interesting, based on some things that people had told me, after I had left the church, which I'll get into later. But I found this really interesting religious trauma syndrome, and I feel like it's not really talked about. And in a way, I don't really agree with the term religious trauma syndrome, because I feel like it's just an umbrella term for lots of mental, not handicaps, mental disorders that come from being raised in a very strict religious environment. You wind up with lots of things like anxiety and depression. For me, it was obsessive compulsive disorder and also bipolar depression. But I kind of just wanted to talk about it because I feel like it's just kind of the time to, because now is kind of the age of science, and we're kind of coming out of a lot of stigmas that we had about things due to religion. A lot more people are not coming out, but a lot more people are non-religious, and things of that nature. And I just wanted to share my experience as someone who was born and raised in the Baptist church, because I feel like it's important. Because there might be someone out there who is struggling with the same things that I did, and they might, be dealing with a multitude of, symptoms and things that they don't know what they are, and they're blaming themselves for them, which is what I was doing. But I'll just start. When I was like, I'm gonna say 8 or 9, I started to have really weird thoughts that would just kind of like pop into my head, like my brain had Tourette's almost. Like violent thoughts and like sexual thoughts. At one point, at the age of 8 or 9, it's kind of rare, back then, because it was like 2001, to be suicidal. But I always constantly thought that I was suicidal, even though I didn't want to kill myself. I was having sexual thoughts about family, which was really weird, and I couldn't explain it. Anxiety. I would stay up, for weeks, basically. I didn't get any sleep because I was just crying, and I was constantly in this cycle of panic, and I didn't know what it was. And at the time, what one of my parents told me is that God was testing me, and that's what this was, is that this was a test from God. And this test from God went on for about 2 years, with me not really eating, not really sleeping, just being panicked and worried, and basically confessing every wrongdoing that I thought I had done to said parent, because it made me extremely anxious and panicky if I did not confess every thought that I had that I thought was evil and bad, basically. 2 years passed. This kind of went away. I never received any psychological help for it, was never taken to a doctor. I was basically just told to pray and, read my Bible more, because I was not doing enough of that. Fast forward into high school. I attended the same school kindergarten through 12th grade. And, in high school, I was a pretty moody teenager. I didn't have any of the symptoms that I had, earlier as a child, thankfully in high school, because that would have just devastated me. But I was pretty moody. That moodiness kind of evolved into some kind of environmentally, STEM depression, kind of. It wasn't, I've seen depression, both my parents have bipolar depression and have mental disorders that are bad, that go beyond just your, environmentally depressed 12-year-old. But I was depressed and, I wasn't self-destructive, but I definitely had some suicidal ideations and things like that. And the way that my school handled this when they found out is they asked me if I truly did have a relationship with Jesus Christ. Because if I truly had a relationship with Jesus Christ, then this wouldn't be happening to me, and I wouldn't feel this way. Which really made me angry, but I was also a coward. So I didn't say anything to the administration, be like, hey, listen, that's really fucked up that you just told me that. You didn't offer to let me see a psychiatrist. You didn't offer any form of help other than to have the pastor at the time, who was fucking weird, by the way. I just always had this weird vibe about this guy. He wasn't sexually perverse, but he was just weird. I think one time he threw an encyclopedia at a student as a joke. No, it was me. Oh yeah, he did. He threw an encyclopedia at me as a joke, and I wasn't paying attention. He slammed another kid up against a wall for kicks. And we didn't know this was illegal because in Christian school they don't tell you that. I had several times, we were high school kids. We'd make jokes, sexual jokes, but every time that would happen, I said something. It was on Facebook of all places, and we were talking about something, and I brought up vagina with teeth, because I had just watched the movie Teeth about the girl with the crazy tooth vagina, and the youth pastor was creeping through the Facebook comments, found that, and me and everyone else, which included me and one other person, got busted for that. We had detention for an entire week. And I cried because I didn't really understand. I did, because it was a Christian school, but this place was hell. And the same pastor who gave me the heebie-jeebies asked me if my soul was right with God and that he would pray for my soul, which is pretty intense when it comes to teenagers just goofing around on the internet. You calm the fuck down a little bit. And I was crying and everything was a mess. It was terrible, and I got into altercations. I think when I was younger in high school, I made videos about swearing because I was really fed up with people saying that, any word that you said, any swear word that you said was, wrong. And so I made this whole video about context, which was really informative. But the thing is that the school saw that and busted me. And basically told me, hey, you need to come to detention every day for a week and explain to everyone, or to us at least, that you're wrong. That your video is wrong. That it is ungodly what you said, blah, 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 etc., etc. And this whole time also I came from a really religious family. So, deep Baptist. Not from the South, but still Baptist. And some people it works out for. I'll get into that later. But fast forward to age 18. I'm doing fairly well with my studies. I've surrendered my life to God or whatever. And now I'm attributing the fact that I'm doing well in my studies to the fact that I've surrendered my life to God. But the fact is, I'm just working really hard because I believe in something. If we're just being completely honest. And a few days before the senior trip, which is something that we would all go on when you became a senior, you got to go somewhere outside of the state that you lived in, which none of us had ever done before, so it was like a huge deal. I started to get intense panic attacks. I didn't sleep for 5 days, and I don't mean like I had naps or like I slept for like 15 minutes here and there. It wasn't anything like that. I literally was up for 5 days, eyes open, nothing, like no sleep, absolutely. Like it was like as if I had taken a dozen Adderall or something. And I was just panicking and crying and panicking and crying, and I wasn't eating, and my friend made me eat like 12 Benadryl to try to get me to sleep because I was just in such a state. I probably should have been taken to a hospital at this point, but said parent refused, said there was nothing wrong with me. And this went on. An adult from the school convinced me to go on the senior trip despite the problems that I was having, which by the way were extremely intense. I didn't know what was happening because I had never seen a psychiatric doctor in my life. I had no idea. I just knew this was really, really bad and that it happened when I was little and I didn't understand it. And that was scary. But anyway, I went on the senior trip and my sleep started to get better, again, because I was putting my faith in something. That's basically it. And you know, the senior trip ended and I was really happy because I could sleep again. I was like, oh my God, this terrible demon thing is gone. It's gone. I can sleep. Finally. And when you haven't slept in that long, sleep, you would sacrifice anything just to be able to sleep. You don't even understand. It makes a person suicidal. Kind of like that guy on Fight Club. Yeah, him. And we came home from the senior trip, and for a week everything was fine. I was super amped because I just got a piercing. I'd always wanted a piercing, but I couldn't have one because I was in high school, a Christian high school. But I was so amped about this, and I was just happy, and I was enjoying myself. And I was still kind of like super happy that I was able to sleep now because I thought it was never going to end. And then all of a sudden, I wake up at 4 a.m. one night and I don't go back to sleep. Instead, I lay there trying to go back to sleep. And how does one fall asleep? And you start thinking about that and it starts to freak you out. And the point is that this continued for almost a year. And it was, I started to see my family doctor because I was getting concerned. I was 18 at the time. I could basically say, hey, listen, Dad, I need to see a doctor. No one could no longer hold me back from that. At this point, no one was telling me that, it was God, God was testing me or anything like that. But I thought the reason why that this was happening to me is because God was angry with me. I thought at that time I had given my number to a boy. I had never done that before. I was like the most antisocial kid on the entire planet. I didn't think that I was attractive or anything like that. So I gave my number to this boy, and he was not a Christian. And I started not to sleep again, and I thought, oh no, this is why. This is why, is because I gave my number to a boy who wasn't a Christian, and now God is mad at me, and he's punishing me for this. That's what this is. And it just continued. And I did get in to see, the first drugs I was given was trazodone. We tried trazodone. Trazodone was, for me, it was terrible. I was in Barnes& Noble and it felt like the whole room was spinning and my head was pounding and I felt like I was going to heave all over the floor, and that was like an everyday thing. And yes, also I was in Barnes& Nobles almost every day. But that didn't work, and I was spending a lot of nights at my grandma's house because I found my grandmother very soothing. I love my grandmother. Just trying to change the atmosphere, I guess, so that I would be able to sleep, and that didn't work. I went back to the doctor, and he put me on Zoloft and Ambien. As soon as I took it, that was like amazing. Like I felt like a weight had been lifted off my shoulders. The Ambien, I was given 5 milligrams at first, that didn't work, so he put me on 10 milligrams, and I found, it kicks in on a completely empty, growling stomach within about 15 minutes, and you start tripping your balls off, and then you fall asleep. That's basically how Ambien works for me. You just start seeing dinosaurs, and then you, literally, I saw a dinosaur, and then you just pass out. And that worked for a while. And I was hopeful. I was like, this is gonna work. This is gonna be great. This is awesome. And then I started to get really bad thoughts again, kind of like I did when I was little. And brace yourselves, those of you who don't fully understand what OCD is, because this might be alarming to you and you might be like, oh my God, she's a freak. But once you understand what it is, it won't be that alarming. I was having bad thoughts about children, just gross thoughts that I didn't want. I didn't want to have them. I felt disgusted. I wanted to end my life. I didn't want to go to a psychiatrist because I thought that they would lock me up. All this stuff, I was having terrible thoughts. I was rolling around on the floor every day, screaming, praying that God would send the devil or something to come kill me in my sleep or right there, just screaming. And I live in an apartment building, so I'm sure it was heard. It was really, really bad. And I went to the doctor again, and I said, listen, this isn't working. And at the time I was scratching at myself, just kind of this kind of stuff, freaking out. And I told him what I just told you about the thoughts and everything else. I was like, do you think it could be OCD? Because I was so desperate. I was looking what I was experiencing up on the internet, and sure enough, everything just came up, OCD, 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 OCD. And for a second, I just felt happy because I knew what this terrible, disgusting creature was that lived inside my brain. And I knew that I wasn't a bad person or a sociopath or a psychopath or that I deserved to die. But my doctor put me on Klonopin. And that is kind of where it started to go downhill. I became very promiscuous, which I no longer subscribe to the Christian faith, to the dismay of many of my family members, and I'll tell you that's kind of the point of this video. I started to abuse my medications. I was taking so much sometimes that I probably should have been dead. I should have been in the psychiatric hospital. I was drinking so much ZzzQuil, and just shoving my mouth, just crying, and just shoving my mouth full of pills. I tried to cut myself, but I was just I couldn't do pain. I started suicide attempts, which were really bad attempts because I just kind of chickened out, which is a good thing. But looking back on it all now, it's hard to thread together, but all of it was caused by how I was raised. The church the school that I went to, the family I was born in, and, bless their hearts, I know they think that they were doing the right thing, but they weren't. They created a suicidal little monster that just wanted to die, basically. It's so hard to express in words. But I guess the point is that religion can be really harmful. I was constantly having panic attacks over whether I was saved or not, because everyone around me, I mean, that was kind of one of the main triggers, was religion, through like my whole anxiety thing, was religion. Because I would read the Bible and I would go to church with my grandma to try to get rid of this anxiety inside of me. And I was met with more anxiety. Because when I was little, my dad, I was like 2 or 3, and my dad basically asked me to believe in Jesus. And I didn't know what I was saying. I had no idea. But I figured, well, Dad, said I should, so I guess I believe in Jesus now. And, a 3-year-old can't make that decision. And to try to get a 3-year-old to make that decision is absurd. They're 3 years old. And, my whole life, basically as a child, I was told, you are going to hell if you do not believe this. But at the same time, I was being told, if you choose to become a Christian solely based on the fear of going to hell, then perhaps you're not a Christian, when that was constantly drilled into my head. So it was kind of hypocritical. And I was having massive panic attacks where I would actually become dehydrated from crying so much and physically exhausted from crying and screaming so much as an adult, 18, because I was afraid that I, didn't believe in God. And the more I thought about it, I realized that I actually didn't, ever. I never, everyone told me that I did, basically. And that's what I was hoping for, because I couldn't confirm myself. Is I was hoping that everyone else would say, no, you do believe in God. I remember when you said this, and blah, blah, blah. And that's basically what everyone did, is they just kind of said, yeah, you believe in God. Trust me, you do. You believe in Jesus. You're good. You're saved. And I kind of went on that, but inside my head I knew that I didn't, because I never got to choose for myself, ever. I never had the chance. In fact, if I had tried to be anything other than a Christian where I was at, I would have been kicked out or given detention or shamed, basically, which is a lot of where my panic came from. And, just recently reading about religious trauma syndrome, which again, I believe is just an umbrella term for disorders that can develop from growing up in a toxic atmosphere that is stemmed from religion. And I realized that this is what happened to me. And I don't know if there's anyone else out there that has had this experience. I don't know if any of my classmates ever had this experience, if they were dealing, maybe not to the same extent, but the same thing. This constant wondering, this constant anxiety that maybe they didn't really believe, and that they would say the prayer over and over again anytime, it was brought up inside their heads, that hopefully maybe if they had one shred of faith that they would go to heaven and not hell. And I mean, today, I'm not the healthiest mentally. I'm not completely there. But today I understand what happened to me, which is a great help, because it's made me bitter. I'll say that. Like, if none of you know who I am on Facebook, but I'm kind of constantly bashing Christianity, and with good reason. I mean, if it works for you, fantastic. But most of the time, it's really toxic. I think a lot of people who are like super gung-ho about it were just ever too scared to admit that they had major doubts, because this was forced. I mean, God knows that me and the rest of my classmates and everyone I went to school with was force-fed this, and they were told that you're going to believe this. This is what you believe now, because you will go to hell. Yes, I know you're 2 years old and I'm telling you this, but you will burn for all eternity. And that alone is a huge environmental trigger for mental illness. You can't just... Children? You're telling children this stuff? Like, that's... Whoa! People say Islam is extreme. Like, I mean, the Bible is extreme, and that's a whole other video that I'll have to do. Because there was a lot of things in school that we were taught about that no one ever actually went into depth on. Like the fact that, you know, when Abraham wanted to have a kid, God basically had him rape his servant. You know, we were all kind of taught that there was no rape involved. She just liked it. She just went with it, even though that's ridiculous. I'm kind of rambling. I was going to make a script, but I'm just bad at things, and I don't really want to make a script. I just wanted to talk about it. But yeah, I just wanted to make this to let anyone else out there know, if they are experiencing anything like this, that you're not alone. Because the past month has been really hard for me. I just want people to know that they're not by themselves. And if there's anything I can do, I mean, I know I'm just a person with a phone, and an inbox, but I kind of suck at answering, but I'll try. I just don't want anyone to ever have to feel like that, because it's terrible and disgusting and depraved. Yeah. I don't really know what else to say. Yeah, religious trauma syndrome. I don't really think that's quite what it is. I think, again, that it's just quite a few mental illnesses stemmed from being raised in that kind of environment. But if that's what we have to call it, to call attention to something that I think is probably affecting more people than we know, that has ruined parts of people's lives. Sorry, I'm still looking at that spider. Then that's what we'll call it. Anything to make, you know, that kid or that boy or that girl feel like, or know actually that there's people out there who have gone through it. That's what we'll call it. Yeah, I mean, you can like this video if you want. I don't really care. It's just kind of informational, and hopefully it helps someone. Yeah, my name's Kara, and this was my channel. And if you want to talk, feel free to just comment below or inbox me. Have a good night, YouTube.